pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I do congratulate the honourable gentleman, the member for Glenrothes, on bringing this subject back to Westminster Hall. And I shall be very brief. I think it's very important, though, to remind ourselves, even though we live in a world of three-letter acronyms, and we will talk about the CMS and the CSA, that actually at the centre of all of our thoughts and considerations and this debate is the welfare of a child and of children. And nothing is more precious to us, or ought not to be more precious to us, than the welfare of our children. Now, I've got no doubt at all that the staff at the Child Maintenance Service are sensitive, they are conscientious, and they are aware of the impact of what they do. And I pay tribute to them, because they're dealing day in and day out with adults, many of whom are in distress, are emotional, and sometimes are very angry. But behind each of these cases, there is a child or children, often bewildered, dealing with complexities they're often too young to process. Now, I'm going to ask the Minister, who I have an immense regard for, and I think he knows that, some questions. I have asked these questions before, because they are the issues that surface in my constituency casework load. And they have to do with the powers that the CMS have got. And, by the way, contrary to what the honourable gentleman says, I wholly support the powers that have been granted CMS in order to track down these reluctant, absent parents. But undoubtedly last December, the CMS were granted more powers. But the question I asked the Minister is, why are they so reluctant to use these powers? Because that's how it appears to me and to my caseworkers. Why do they seem to be unprepared to exercise the full extent of the powers that they have to investigate cases, especially when there's a clear cut, when it's really clear cut that something seriously is amiss? And I'm thinking of a case, which obviously I will anonymise, where a non-resident parent is a clever accountant. And he's clearly hiding his income. You can tell that by the lifestyle that he's able to maintain. It's clear what is happening. The earnings are being hidden away, squirreled away, disguised. But nothing happens. And another case where the MP contact agreed that an investigation was urgently needed, but someone somewhere else in CMS subsequently flatly turned this down. These are just two examples, but there are so many others. So why the reluctance to press ahead? Is this reluctance to use powers based on how resource-intensive using these powers is? That's my question. Does the Child Maintenance Service have the resources it needs? It has the powers. Does it have the resources it needs to enforce these powers? And once again, based on the experience of my constituents, I'm raising a question about how the CMS works internally. Do they have the right internal systems to support the work they do, to manage their casework? I've no doubt it's a heavy case load for every single one of the people managing their clients. But looking from the outside in, it's hard not to conclude that the systems are either not functional or the system users are not working to a standard. Now, why does there appear to be so little in the way of cohesive or comprehensive notes or records for in the case of my constituents? They will phone up. They may speak to the same person, which is an improvement, but sometimes they speak to different people. But when they speak to different people, they have to rehearse their situation over and over again. That's deeply upsetting and distressing. Is there a standard? It seems a very basic question to ask a minister, but is there a standard for making notes? Is there a standard for creating follow-up items, action points? Is the system quality checked? Are the users of the system being assisted to maintain a high standard? These are some of my questions. And then there are the letters that my constituents receive. When they're in the complaint process, they will often receive generic form letters with phrases sometimes in them that are it's just not clear what's meant. These can create confusion and upset. And my senior caseworker, Rachel Nunn, whom I pay tribute to, and I have tried to help our constituents to decipher these letters. But they are so general, not specific enough, not personalised enough, and they are confusing because they're not sufficiently personalised. As a consequence, they create anxiety and stress for parents, and the last thing those parents need is more stress. So I will conclude, Mr. Owen, and thank you for affording me the time to make these short comments. I end with a simple home truth. There's a human cost to the breakdown of relationships. Yes, adults pay a price, an emotional price, a mental price, a well-being price, but those who often, sadly, invariably suffer the most are children. And frankly, Mr. Owen, I'm aghast at how mean-spirited some adults can be when it comes to the welfare of their own children. And that's why I support the new powers that the government have granted the CMS, and that is why I implore the Minister and the CMS to use those powers. And I hope when the Minister rises to his feet, he might be able to address at least some of the issues that I've addressed in